All right, well, let's focus then on the long term, provided we consider about a decade out to the long term. Because you told Robert Kiyosaki about a month ago that in 10 years' time, in 2031, you see Bitcoin at $12.5 million, but with an inflation-adjusted value of around $1 million, meaning the current purchasing power of $1 million per Bitcoin. Do you maintain that outlook?
I do maintain that outlook. And this is based on percentage expansion rates of money supplies historically. So the United States expanded into over 30% last year. And it's easy to forget, and mankind has forgotten this repeatedly throughout history. It usually takes a few generations each time, that the expansion of the money supply is governed by a law. And it's called the law of accelerating issuance and depreciation. So the more money you print, the more money you ultimately later have to print just to keep the system going. So I do expect the expansion of USM2 to double again, probably in the next 4 years. And then I expect it to double again from there. So we'll be north of 100% USM2 expansion annually by the end of the decade. At the same time, because money has this centripetal network effect, we tend towards one. That's what gold was, that's what the US dollar is. I do expect a lot of the weaker international currencies to collapse into the dollar during this transition. Global M2 today is about $100 trillion. USM2 is about 20 trillion, so it's roughly 20% of that. I would expect USM2 to expand to be about 40% of global M2 by the end of the decade. But global M2 itself will have expanded from 100 trillion due to this law of accelerating issuance and depreciation to about 1.25 quadrillion, which is $1,250 trillion. So I think its purchasing power will increase to $1 million in 2021 purchasing power. But by that time, due to the expansion in the money supply from 100 trillion USM2 to 1,250 trillion M2, Bitcoin will actually be nominally valued at $12.5 million US by the end of the decade. Further, at that point, currencies tend to start hyperinflating. So I actually think fiat currency globally will be collapsed by the mid-2030s.
All right, so certainly no disagreement, I think, in terms of the expansion of the monetary supply, the M2 out there, and certainly the inflation concerns and the debasement of fiat currencies. But what makes you so confident still that Bitcoin is going to be the solution here?
Bitcoin has introduced properties of money that are as close to perfect as the world has ever had. And so what I really challenge people that are skeptical of Bitcoin to do is to ask themselves, first of all, the question, what is money? And then secondly, why was gold selected by the free market as money? Why has gold stood the test of time for over 5,000 years? What are the properties of gold that caused it to be selected? And if you do that digging, you do that homework, you're going to end up very deep into Austrian economics at some point, which is the cumulative wisdom of humanity on economics. And it stands in counter-distinction to Keynesian economics, which I would classify more as central bank propaganda. And money in general is essentially selected based on 5 properties. I've covered this a lot in my work. They are divisibility, durability, recognizability, portability, scarcity. I won't expound upon them here, but feel free to dig some into Austrian economics or check out my work to see why. And essentially across those 5 properties of money, Bitcoin has perfected them in a way that the world's never seen before.